Hey, check this out. When a deal dies, everybody talks about the last 90 days. They talk about the capital call, the lender letter, the email nobody wanted to write. And I'm telling you, the last 90 days is not where that deal was lost. That deal was lost 18 months earlier on a Tuesday in a report that nobody read carefully. Nobody loses a building or a property overnight. They lose it slowly in small decisions and small things that they've overlooked uh, that all looked reasonable at the time, but really weren't. Kind of those red flags that I've talked about in the past. Hey, welcome back, everybody. I'm Mike Morawski, and this is the Mic Drop Show. We're here every Wednesday morning. So I hope you have your coffee this morning. You tap somebody on the shoulder, let them know that we just went live and that we're here to bring some uncensored real estate for you. This is where we bring clarity and structure to real estate and real estate finance. As I said, I'm here every Wednesday morning at 7:30 Pacific time, 9:30 Central, 10:30 Eastern. So wherever you are, good morning, good afternoon. Hope you are enjoying your day. We're going to get into some tough stuff here this morning. Um, so if you're driving this morning, I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you're listening in. But if you're looking to take some notes, you might want to pull over a little bit and pull out a notepad, take some notes. If you're sitting at your desk this morning, maybe put a headset on. We get a little uncensored. So last week we spent some time on the front end of the deal and how to screen it or how to kill it fast, how to decide what deserves you to burn calories and what doesn't. A bunch of you wrote back during the week here, and the question that kept coming up was some version of this. Okay, Mike, I screened it, I bought it. Now what do I actually watch for? And one guy actually sent me a note that I've been thinking about all week. He said, Mike, my deal isn't in trouble, but something feels off and I can't point at it. I can't put my finger on it. And I wrote him back and I said, that feeling is the data. That feeling is your gut. I had a good friend who used to say, the math never lies. And, if you're reading the reports and you're looking at some of those little uh, uh, financial aspects along the way, the math doesn't lie. So this morning, I want to give you 5 things that make a good operator sit up 18 months earlier. And then I'm going to give you what I call the 90-day intervention, which is what you do when you see one. Let me say this before we start. I'm not doing this from a textbook. You know what? I've lost buildings. I've lost millions. I've been up on one side of the business and down on the other. I've spent a lot of years since then going back through the tape in my head, asking the useful questions. When did it actually start? Because it never just started when you thought it did. It started before that. I got to explain. Smart people miss some things because they aren't, they're not dumb people. They're just, they miss things and they don't listen. Two of my biggest things I talk about when I tell my story publicly is that I didn't pay attention to the details, and that I didn't listen to people around me who were smarter than me and saw things that I missed. But these guys are guys with MBAs, good guys with good track records, guys who've done 10 deals before this one. So why does it get past them? 3 reasons. Reason 1 is deals don't fail, they drift. So let that sink in for a minute. If your building lost 20% of its value one morning, you'd be on a plane. But that's not what happens. And, speaking of that, I had a property manager call me one time and say to me, in tears on a Monday morning, crying, saying, Mike, I don't know what's going on. I have 32 moving trucks in the parking lot this morning, and I don't have a scheduled move out for 45 days. What happens, right? What happens is you lose a 0.5% a month for 20 months, and not everything in a single month. Is it ever worth getting a phone call from your property manager, from your on-site staff? Is it worth you picking up the phone and calling anybody? But that's where we wind up in a trap. There's never a day where it's obviously time to act. So you keep not acting, and not acting is a decision. It's those little things that you see that you miss, but you think, yeah, it's no big deal. But it is a big deal because you've missed 3 of them now, and there's 5 more in front of them, and you keep putting them off. And then all of a sudden they accumulate, and you have this whole bucket of little things, right? Which have caused the big event to happen. Reason 2 is your reporting's designed to reassure you that everything's okay. Think about who puts that report together: your property manager, the management company. If you're a private investor, your sponsor put that report together, the asset manager put that report together, somebody whose job security is attached to that report looking okay. I'm not saying they're lying to you. Most of them aren't, but everybody rounds in their favor. Human nature is to round up, right? I do it. I never play with pennies. I always take the decimals out, and it automatically rounds up. So it makes it look a little bit better than it really is. But it's only a couple pennies, right? So reason 3 is that you hope that a real strategy shows up, that somebody comes to the door, knocks on the door, and gives you an alternative. Hope's not an alternative, right? Hope is something that you hang on to, in the grasping. Whoever saw that picture of the cat hanging off a bar saying, hang in there, right? That's hope. The alternative to hope is admitting that the plan needs to change. And, I talk about this a lot, but, at the beginning of the year, you might set goals for yourself. But if you're not looking at those goals that you need to look at over time and readjust those goals, you're just hanging in there on a whim. And that's not where you want to be. All right, let's jump into 5 warning signs. Number 1, collections drift before occupancy does. And this is one of those earliest signs, right? Your collections are getting higher, your delinquency is getting higher, and then all of a sudden you start to see your occupancy, your physical occupancy. How many doors are nobody living behind? Your economic occupancy. Remember, vacancy consists of 2 things: economic and physical. That economic vacancy is how many people live there and are actually paying you, right? That's the number you need to care about, not so much the physical vacancy. If nobody's paying, I'd rather have it empty because it costs you money because you're supporting those people who live there. So that physical and economic vacancy are ones that you really need to take a look at. Number 2, and I love this one because it's completely free to watch. Your reporting gets slower and it gets prettier. So the reports that you were getting weekly have now slowed down to every 10 days, 2 weeks. When a property's running well, the reports come in early. They're kind of boring and a little sloppy, but nobody's fussing over them because the numbers look great. Nobody polishes up good news. Good news doesn't help, doesn't need any help. When a property's struggling, 2 things happen at the same time. The reports come in late and the narrative gets longer and it gets sloppier and you wonder what's going on. So that's really the second thing that we need to look at. Now, number 3 is the turn in cost starts to creep in. The turn time stretches. So when it took you 3 days to get another apartment ready because you had somebody who was ready there to rent. Now it's taken 7 to 10 days. And this is the one that quietly eats value away, right? Your maintenance guy takes you what they used to be able to do in 3 days. Now, because they know things are slower, there's more to do, they take longer. And so before they get that unit fixed up and put back on the market, what used to take that 3 days now takes 7 days. And you're paying more for the same amount of work. It's just taking longer. Why is that? It's a phenomenon that happens, but you've got to pay attention to it. Because if you're seeing any one of these three happening so far, then you actually need to be really starting to evaluate what's going on. And then number 4, and this one is where the deal stops being early and starts being real. You start funding operations out of reserves. Now, stay with me on this because this is a distraction because it matters. Reserves exist to be used. That's what they're for. So there's no warning sign. You're using them because that's what they're there for. You're pulling money out of the bank. You're using it for the property, but you're not using it for the right stuff. You're using it for operations versus for a roof or for a unit turn or for a major repair. And these aren't CapEx things. These are those normal daily R&M that those reserves should be used for, because that's how we go back to the bank and get that money. But when you got to go back to the bank and pull that money out to use it in operations, warning sign number 4, that could start to become a deal killer. And you can't wait for that money to come in because it's got to get there. And the clocks are negotiating against you. What's your clock saying to you right now? And then number 5, and this is the last one, and this is the one that turns a bad deal into a catastrophic deal. The communication goes quiet. Management stops responding, on-site people stop responding. Then if you're a private investor, sponsor stops responding. Asset management can't get any answers, can't get any fixes. When a deal's going well, you send updates, you're proud of them, even if they look sloppy, like I said earlier. When it's not, you start finding reasons to wait. You start finding reasons to push things off further and further. Listen, I'm guilty of this myself, and it happens. But, this is a good reminder, even for me this morning, that you need to pay attention to these things along the way. And if you sat down right now with every one of your deals and you looked at each one of these things, where do you fall in the spectrum on this? Are you in a place that things are still running well, or are you in a place that things are starting to get tougher? Silence is not a neutral place. Silence is a message, and the message people receive, it's worse than whatever you were afraid to tell somebody. I always say, communication is really important. Pick up the phone. The distance between a deal that had a rough year and a deal that becomes a lawsuit is almost never the performance. It's the communication. Think about that. When a sponsor goes from monthly numbers to quarterly vibes, there's a warning sign for you there. What's economic occupancy this month? What's the trailing 3-month NOI? Against what? How did we underwrite it? What's the budget look like? What's the reverse balance? And the next debt maturity date? These are all things you need to look at. 3 questions and how those come back tells you everything. Fast and specific, right? You've got an operator, slow in general, you've got a problem, and you find it early, which is the whole point. Because what I always say, the better questions we ask, the better answers we get. Okay, grab your coffee for a minute. So let's say you spotted one of these in your deal. Now what do? Because seeing it And doing nothing is worse than seeing it. And at least the guy who didn't see it has an excuse. So here's the protocol: 90 days, 3 phases, every 90 days. First 30 days, stop the story, tell the truth. Pull out the last 12 months of history, look, see where you missed the red flags. Uh, Look at the actual bank statements, look at the trending reports, not just the statements, but the reports. Rebuild the T12 yourself, rewrite the budget, take some initiative, and make people be more responsive. Set a business plan into place, get that in place, and then hold people accountable. And here's my mindset for that 30 days. And you're not defending your decisions. You're finding out the truth. And I know how hard that is, because your name's on this. Your reputation is on this. You told people it was a good deal. And, you believed it in the beginning. You actually did. And that's what you sold people. The second 30 days, find the room. 3 levers, and only 3. Everything else is noise. Lever 1 is income. What can actually be collected? I had somebody tell me a long time ago, they said, whenever you find yourself in a stressful situation, whenever you find yourself with so many things to do and so many things going on that your mind feels cluttered and scattered, and you feel that you don't have a good handle on it, focus on money now. What will bring capital in now? Same thing on a deal. If a deal is stressed, if a deal is hurting, what will increase operating income, and what will bring money in now? Hey, listen, if you have to get on a plane and fly to that deal and start knocking doors and collecting $5 and $10 from tenants and getting that money in the bank, then that's what you need to do. Lever 2 is the expenses. Great business decisions are made, or great businesses are built because you do one of 2 things. You raise income, you lower expenses, right? Either one of those things will help the business, but the best businesses are built because both of those things happen simultaneously. You go up in income, you go down in expenses at the exact same time. You can do this without breaking the bank, and it increases month after month, week after week, quarter after quarter, and you get to the end of the year, and all of a sudden, you've got a savings account, you've got a loan that's paid down, you've got occupancy that's up, you've got repairs that have been done, and now this has created more value in a stressful time. So even if you are in a place where things are tougher today, just build a plan to bail out. Listen, if you're there and you want somebody to talk to, call me. I'm more than happy to spend some time with you. And then number 3, send 1 email today, even if it's hard. Tony Robbins talked a long time ago and still talks about having a notepad, right? I operate on a daily basis with a yellow pad. I write down, and I don't know if you can see it, I write down every day everything that needs to be done. I get it out of my head so I can think clearly. But then what I do at the end of the day is I go through that and I see what I got done. I see what I need to do. I reorganize for tomorrow, start over. But I highlight the 3 most important things. Could be a hard phone call, could be a hard email. Listen, I get emails from investors. I get social media posts from investors, people I really don't want to have to deal with or respond to, but I do, because it's the right thing to do and because communication is so important. When you raise that capital, you brought people in wanting them to feel comfortable and confident. You want to still give that same effect, even if if the deal's gone sideways. So get those investor updates out, send that, make that hard phone call today. And listen, I know this is one was a little heavier than Wednesday morning usually gets. So this morning was probably a little bit tougher, but I don't think it's a negative show. I actually think it's optimistic, right? It's an optimistic thing to talk about what's tough, what's hard, what needs to be dealt with. Because if deals died overnight, then you're helpless. But they don't. And you don't need to be helpless. They give you 18 months of signals, right? And when you get those signs, it's like being in a relationship, right? There's signs, but you see them along the way. So the real question is anybody watching? Now, here's the honest bridge to the rest of what I want to say. Everything I just gave you is how you can catch a problem. In building, you all in a building or a property that you already own, and that's a lot cheaper than the alternative. But you know what's cheaper still? Not buying that building, because every one of these five signs has a version of itself on the acquisition side. So think about that for a minute. How many buildings have you underwritten? And my coaching clients come to me all the time. We're underwriting deals every day, every week. I have, we're watching multiple markets, and we've yet, even though there's been pricing adjustments in the market right now, and property prices have come down, deals still don't pencil, and they're still not making sense. I bet we underwrite 5 to 10 deals a week with my coaching clients, and we're looking for the next best deal, but there's nothing there. So it's a pressure cooker right now. So you'll say yes to something because you're hungry, because you want to buy a deal, because you think you're going to be smarter than that deal, but the math doesn't lie. If you're seeing a negative return to investors on the acquisition side, why would you want to try and buy that deal and bring it to the market and raise capital and have inflated rents and have inflated taxes and expenses, and your insurance go up on you after you buy the deal, and then you're stuck? Yeah, tough conversation, right? Because I know that you've been there, you've done it, I've done it, we've all done it. So don't let the deal beat you before you buy it. Um, don't let the deal beat you after you buy it. Beat the deal, right? Your job as an operator is to increase value. Your job as an operator is to take the data and put the data to work for you. I always tell people when we're underwriting and I'm teaching them to underwrite, I always tell people, I say, you've got to take the data, right? Everything that you put in the underwriting, that becomes your business plan, as well as the story that you're going to tell investors. So you have to make sure the math aligns. You may have to make sure your belief aligns with the math. You have to make sure that you can take that, convey it to an investor in order to succeed in raising capital. And if you do that, and then you follow that plan, because here's what goes into the underwriting. You're going to put your rents in. You're going to put actual operations from the seller. You're going to put your pro forma. Can I run this deal better than the seller, the same as the seller? Is it going to be worse than the seller? You're going to put your construction and CapEx into it. You're going to put your rent growth into it. You're going to put your exit into it. You're going to build your business plan for your syndication into it. And that's your story, right? So why inflate that? And go to the market with a lack of belief in what really can happen. It's a whole different skill set for people, right? It's one I work with in my coaching program, helping people. So if you've listened to the 5 signs this morning and one of them's landed a little too close to home, and you got that feeling in your stomach like, oh shit, that's exactly the moment to reach out. Book a call with me. Tell me which one of those feelings came up for you. Tell me where you're at, what's going on in your deals. Don't react, don't overact. Just, let's talk about it and see if we can help you through. You know what? A lot of times a conversation helps. Tell you a quick story. I have a situation outside of real estate going on in another business that I own, and I'm trying to put together a business plan and a strategy. And I realize that, and we all should realize we can't do any of this ourselves. We need to be in conversation. We need to be in groups. We need to be in masterminds. I called a friend of mine, longtime friend, very successful business guy, and I said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And he gave me two or three ideas that just helped, right? And if you're somebody who needs a couple of ideas, maybe I have them. Maybe I can give them to you. Give me a call. Otherwise, just follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. Anywhere you hang out, we hang out. Subscribe to our channels, drop a question or a comment about this week's episode. We're here every week. I want to thank you for being here this morning. I hope you have a great day, a great week. Remember, nobody loses a building overnight. They lose it over a series of weeks, months, and quarters. Where nothing looked wrong enough to do anything about, that's where you need to do something about it. Real estate isn't bought with money, it's bought with structure. And this has been the Mike Drop Show. And I'm Mike Morawski, and I will continue to be here every week. Look forward to seeing you soon, everybody.